Bonjour à tous. Alors, cette petite vidéo est ici pour vous expliquer le fonctionnement de l'interview. Cette interview se déroulera en anglais exclusivement. Ça veut donc dire qu'il n'y aura pas de sous-titres, donc je m'excuse sincèrement pour les anglophobes. Cependant, une version écrite de l'interview devrait suivre, elle sera traduite en français. Donc vous aurez une possibilité quand même d'arriver à comprendre ce qui s'est dit. Après cette brève vidéo, vous allez retrouver donc l'interview de l'auteur, qui est issue de DeConnick dans le cas présent. Et après l'interview en elle-même, vous allez me retrouver. Alors, non, ce n'est pas uniquement pour me revoir, bien que si vous voulez, vous pouvez aussi. C'est simplement parce que je souhaite vous présenter une courte bibliographie, donc ça ne sera pas exhaustif, dans laquelle vous pouvez retrouver l'auteur en question. Donc moi, je vous dis à très bientôt, d'ici une vingtaine de minutes, et profitez de la vidéo.
My name is DeConnick and I write comic books, Pretty Deadly and Bitch Planet, and I'm probably best known for Captain Marvel, but I'm not on that book anymore, alas. I have a theater degree, actually. I have a degree in drama from the University of Texas at Austin. I was a theater studies major.
Does it help you to write for?
I think it does, actually. I think, and in fact, there's a shocking number of people in comics who have theater backgrounds. Steve Wacker was my editor on Captain Marvel. Was a big drama nerd, and Lauren Sankovic and Ellie Pyle and James Asmus, and there's a ton of us, actually. I don't know what that's about, but I think as the writer, and also this is true of the artists as well, I think that there's an element of acting, like getting inside the head of the character and kind of improvising, so it makes sense. My first work for Marvel was part of the Women of Marvel initiative back in, I think it was 2009. I'm not 100% sure of that, but they were doing this Women of Marvel initiative that I think Janine Schaefer actually spearheaded, and so they were trying to staff the books with as many women as possible, and my husband was already working at Marvel on Iron Man at the time, and Alejandro Arbona asked him if he knew any women writers that they could that would be interested in pitching or submitting, and Matt was like, yeah, my wife, but I don't, is that cool? And so what we decided to do was I was blind submitted, so my work at IDW on 30 Days of Night, Cuban and Stella, that I co-wrote with Steve Niles, we sent that to Alejandro, and he gave it to Ralph Macchio, and just didn't tell him that I was married to Matt. And then after, so he approved me to pitch from that sample. I did 2 pitches. I pitched on Sif and I pitched on Rescue. And then after the pitches were approved, we told him, because we didn't want him to find out later and get, in trouble. And we were like, is that a problem? And I was like, yeah, no, it's not an issue. And I was afraid he was going to be mad, but he laughed, so it was all right. So then after that, sort of like, once you do a job for Marvel, then DC wants you, and so on, so. No, I loved comics and I read comics, but I don't think it occurred to me that anyone made them. Like, I don't know, I just never had that thought that there were. I mean, I do remember the point at which I started noticing the names of the creators, but it's still, well, for one thing, I didn't read any books by women, so it didn't occur to me that that was something I could do. So it was not it's sort of something I kind of stumbled into backwards, really. You know, after I figured out I didn't really have the personality type for acting, or for the business of acting anyway, then I really started focusing on writing, and I knew I wanted to be a fiction writer. I actually wanted to be a fiction writer or a poet, and poets don't make a livable income for the most part. So I was like, well, I like to pay rent. So after that, it was just sort of like whatever venues or outlets I could find, and I knew comics because I'd grown up reading comics because I was in a military family, and then so it just became something I kind of fell into. So. I am so proud of Pretty Deadly. I think there are things about it I would change. There's a couple things I would change, if I could. I don't think the pacing is good, and that's on me. Like it wraps up too quickly. I just needed a few more pages, 3 or 4 more pages, I think. And if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't force it. I would just, ask if we could have the extra pages. And beg Emma to forgive me, I suppose. And I wish it read better in individual issues. I wish it read better episodically. I think it's a book that reads well in a trade. Like it reads well in a large chunk, and that feels like a failure on my part. Emma has done everything perfectly. I feel a little bit as like I haven't. I'm trying to get better, but those are the two things I really feel like I need to be better at. But that book fights back, So we're working on the second arc now, and I have much more experience than I did with my first arc on that book, and the pacing is better. I mean, I haven't gotten to the end yet, so we'll see. But I still feel like that book resists the episodic format. Like it isn't quite. I want to do better at that, and that book makes it hard for me. I don't know why. Johnny Coyote's jacking with me somehow. I don't even know I don't even know whose story Pretty Deadly is. There's so everyone has an arc. There's an argument to be made for the fact that you could say it's Fox's story. We put Jenny on the cover because I think it's Jenny's story in the long run, over the course of the whole series. It'll be Jenny's story, but I don't know. I mean, I remember when I was working on that book at one point, I had the thought, are there too many women? And then I got angry at myself for having that thought. It was just no dude has ever been oh, too many men in this book, that's stupid. And so I was just more ladies. No. No, hell no. There should be more of us, and we should get it paid as much as the men. Bring it. So, yeah. Yes, there has absolutely been an improvement. In fact, there's been a very sharp improvement of late. Over the last 3 years, the number of women working on the creative side of comics have gone like this. So yes, there has been a huge improvement, but still, we're nowhere near parity, you know. And like the thing is that, like, well, you know, we already have a lady, you know, like we're not actually a minority. We get referred to as a minority all of the time. We're a power minority. Numerically, there are more of us than there are of you, you know? So I'm not down with this. There's this thing where, like, when they test audiences, like more than 30% women is seen as like a overwhelmingly female. Like, that's just bad math, you guys. We are 51% of the global population. We should be represented somewhere close to 50% in the staffing. And I understand it takes time, but nobody sit down. Okay? No, I wrote it as a reaction to the treatment of women in the world. And particularly women of color, which is not my experience at all. But women of color are incarcerated at 3 times the rate white women are. That's a problem. That is a cultural problem. We are failing our sisters somehow. The book is a mean satire. The book's meant to be funny, but the real problems that underlie it have to be addressed, you know? It's not... You know, there's certainly an amount of venting my spleen, but there's nothing, this isn't about making my life better, you know? This is about taking responsibility for our brothers and sisters, but in particular our sisters. Well, it started out I had met Valentine Delandro at the Toronto Comic-Con and Fan Expo, that's what it was. It was Fan Expo in Toronto, and I quite liked him, and I loved his portfolio. His work was beautiful. I particularly love his use of negative space, and his acting is extraordinary. And so we wanted to do a book together, and we just kind of kept trying to make something happen at one of the big 2 publishers, and it never really worked out. We got to do a Superman short. That was it. And so Val said, you know, why don't we just do something together? Like, we don't have to wait for someone to hire us. Let's just do something. And it was like, all right. So I keep a list of ideas, and I sent him this list and was like, you know, anything in there spark your interest? And he had a look at it, and he was like, yeah, there's a couple things here I like, but I really like this bitch planet idea. At that point, the whole idea was like gladiatorial combat in like a space prison, you know? And it was like, yeah, you know, I like that. What's that? And I was like, I don't know. Let's figure out what that is. And then at the time I was dealing with a lot of the backlash off of people who thought, like, I was bringing my mean feminist agenda to Captain Marvel and making it no fun, you know? And I was like, shut up. And so my feeling about that was like, first of all, Captain Marvel's feminist roots, or Ms. Marvel's feminist roots, way predate me. I was 7 years old when Ms. Marvel came out, and if you think my stuff is heavy-handed, go back and read the early stuff, because I mean it is Gloria Steinem fan fiction at one point, you know? Like, she is drawn with the center part and the Steinem glasses, and she edits a magazine called Woman Magazine. I mean, they're not subtle about it. It is at the core of the character. So this was not me bringing my agenda. That was like one thing that annoyed me. And the second thing that annoyed me was like, this is not Angry Feminist. This is a very fun, uplifting book. And if you would like to see Angry Feminist, I will show you Angry Feminist. And there came Bitch Planet. So. important to say thank you, you know? I think it's important to have an opportunity to give my full attention individually to the people who allow me to make my living in this way, you know? I think you gotta keep your ego in check, you know? And I think that's a good way to do it, is to remember that you are in service of these people who read your books, you know? Not so much that you should reverse engineer, but they're your patrons, and you need to say thank you, and you need to connect and listen, and get the, you know, I get cried on a lot, and it's a very human moment. It's very humbling, and it makes you remember what a privilege it is to make story. You know, what a privilege it is to speak in a language that connects people to themselves and to one another. It reminds you that you are a small part of, you know, of a larger humanity and a larger artistic community, and that you are in service, I think. And I think that's super important. I think if you spend a lot of time at your desk at home, you can start to think that, like, you're important. You are not important. The story is important, and the power of story is important. You will expire. Everyone goes out of fashion. Like, those lines that you have, no matter who you are, those lines will eventually go away. Well, my family, a part of my family, my paternal grandfather, so the part that my name comes from, is from Belgium. Although I think that there's some, the boundaries changed, and like some part of it may be Luxembourg, but our name used to be spelled differently, and it was the same as the beer that has the hand on it. So I know beer from Belgium, and also I think there is a castle that was associated with some part of my family, but I understand that, like, because DeConnick was like some variation of the king, but the king that we were associated with, not a good man, not a good king, not a good dude. So maybe we're like, sorry, yeah. I get up really early. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I write from 3 in the morning until 5:30. People find that entertaining. I also go to bed really early. I go to bed at 8 o'clock. So it's pretty sexy. Yeah. Hello, Belgium.
Nous revoici pour cette petite bibliographie. Alors j'ai choisi 3 récits principalement que vous retrouverez chez Glénat. On va commencer par un livre dont on n'a pas parlé lors de l'interview. Ce livre, c'est Ghost. Donc voici la magnifique couverture. Voilà. Ce livre met en scène un fantôme, d'où le titre, qui a été invoqué par 2 comparses, Vaughn et Tommy, qui ne s'attendaient pas à voir ce magnifique fantôme, amnésique de surcroît. Donc il y aura d'une part la quête de l'identité du fantôme, elle va chercher à savoir qui elle est, et d'autre part pas mal d'actions. C'est par moments violent, sans être trop graphique pour autant. On a encore une femme forte, il faut dire que DeConnick a un vrai talent pour mettre des femmes en scène. Deuxième livre, le livre dont on a parlé lors de l'interview, il s'agit de Pretty Deadly. Donc voici la couverture. Vous voyez donc la magnifique Ginny bien recousue. Qui est Ginny? Ginny est la fille de la mort. Oui, rien que ça. Elle est aussi faucheuse à ses heures perdues, c'est-à-dire faucheuse, elle est là pour ramener les âmes à la mort, tout simplement. Donc certains d'entre nous ont des métiers comme fonctionnaire, caissier ou peu importe. Elle est faucheuse. C'est plutôt pas mal. Dans son récit, on retrouvera également d'autres personnages qui viendront l'accompagner. Le scénario est vraiment bien amené, c'est très bien écrit. Les dessins correspondent parfaitement à l'ambiance voulue. Une ambiance très western. Troisième livre, et cette fois-ci je triche un peu parce qu'en fait le livre est encore à paraître, donc il paraîtra en avril 2016 également en édition Glénat. Et pourquoi est-ce que je vous en parle? Simplement parce que ce livre est très important pour Kelly DeConnick. Donc ce livre c'est Beach Planet, vous pouvez voir un bref aperçu de Beach Planet donc, dans un livre qui a été fourni lors de la Paris Comic Con, qui reprend en fait quelques previews de comics Glénat, dont Beach Planet. Donc Beach Planet se passe sur une planète carcérale où ne sont emprisonnées que des femmes. Les conditions de survie sont excessivement dures et ces femmes doivent lutter contre leur environnement et contre elles-mêmes. C'est un récit qui se veut fortement engagé, vous l'aurez compris, l'auteur en a parlé certainement mieux que moi je peux en parler, et je vous recommande par avance chaudement la lecture. Et pour finir, parce que Kelly Sue n'est pas uniquement aux éditions Glénat, vous pouvez également la retrouver chez Panini. Alors vous pouvez la retrouver où? Sur Captain Marvel ou sur Avengers Assemble. Donc je ne les ai pas malheureusement, je ne pourrais donc pas vous les montrer. Les retours que j'ai lus jusque maintenant sont excessivement positifs, donc si vous les trouvez, foncez. Si vous les avez, n'hésitez pas à les relire. Sur ce, je vous dis à très bientôt pour une prochaine interview. Portez-vous bien.